So the next sets of muscles are going to be more muscles that are going to surround the opening of the gut tube that are going to help with swallowing. So there are muscles of the tongue. Those muscles of the tongue help us obviously manipulate our tongue for not just swallowing, but also creating sound. You want to know, what are those muscles and what are they innervated by? There are some muscles that I'm going to talk about right now that maybe you can see on models, but are not necessarily on your lab list for you to look at. But I'll show you where they are on the models in class. So there are muscles like mylohyoid, geniohyoid. Remember, those muscles are muscles that help us move our hyoid because they have hyoid in the name. And then we have things like glossus muscles. So when you think about the tongue muscles, you want to think about, they usually have the name glossus in them. And they're going to be innervated by the hypoglossal nerve. I'll pick a different color here. Try to pick a different color. Yellow never works. So remember, cranial nerve number 9 is the glossopharyngeal nerve. It innervates one muscle called the stylopharyngeus muscle. Where is that muscle? It's very difficult to find that one, so we're not going to worry too much about it. You should just know it for your lecture exam. But the tongue muscles you also need to know for your lecture exam. So if we go over some of those models, you can also see like what are each of the muscles and then what is their innervation. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the one muscle. Let's see, we're going to go back to, unfortunately, I did cranial nerve 5-3 is mandibular. It's in orange, so I'm not going to pick orange here. Let's change that. And here we're going to do CN 5-3, and then we'll still go back to facial. Okay, so facial nerve doesn't really innervate muscles of the tongue, but there are some muscles here that you can see that'll be innervated by the facial nerve. And I don't know, we'll just make this purple, CN 12, which is hypoglossal. Okay. So first off, on this model here, on our sagittally section model, we're going to see that muscle there is mylohyoid. And then we are going to see another section of muscle that goes basically from the mandible over to the tongue. This is our geniohyoid muscle. And geniohyoid, its innervation is one of those things that you didn't have to know. So maybe I'll just do that. I believe geniohyoid's innervation, if I recall correctly from our lecture, was the ansa cervicalis. It's part of the cervical plexus, its innervation, but I'd have to go back and double check. And then we're going to see that there's another muscle that comes up to the tongue. This is called genioglossus. So genioglossus is one of the muscles that's innervated by cranial nerve number 12. Because it helps us with movement of the tongue. This one's going to help you with protracting or pushing your tongue forward. And then the tongue itself is right here. So the intrinsic muscles that make up the tongue are also innervated by cranial nerve number 12. And then when we look at the other large model we had in class, again, so this strip down here is mylohyoid, innervated by cranial nerve 5-3, the mandibular nerve. And then the next one, this next strip, is geniohyoid. And then here you can't see genioglossus because they cut the tongue in a weird 3-dimensional way. But you can see that there's a set of fascicles going in the opposite direction here from the hyoid to the tongue. This is hyoglossus. Sorry, my brain stopped for a minute. This one's going to help you push the tongue forward. Actually, I'm sorry. This helps you retract your tongue. So you see how the fascicles will pull the tongue backwards like that. And then you have a couple other muscles over here. So one of these is styloglossus. This one is styloglossus. And you might be like, how do you know that? Well, that's the styloid process, and you see how it's going to the tongue. So again, this one helps you like retract and elevate the tongue. And then I can see that there's going to be another muscle here attached to the styloid process. So that muscle attached to the styloid process, that's actually going to be stylohyoid, which is innervated by the facial nerve. And then back behind it is digastric, the posterior belly. So again, those two muscles aren't muscles of the tongue, they're muscles of the hyoid, but I forgot to label them on my other picture, so I want to make sure I label them there. And then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to show you, so there's a muscle there, and there's a muscle right there. So that's stylohyoid. And this one right here is digastric, posterior belly. Okay, those are both innervated by cranial nerve 7. That's part of the facial nerve. And I know you might be thinking, how come, 5 is in the front and 7 is in the back? It has to do with how these are made. They're made during embryonic development because of those pharyngeal pouches that come off the neck area. And the first one that comes off is made by, it's called the mandibular arch. So everything made by it is innervated by cranial nerve 5-3, the mandibular nerve. The second one is called the hyoid arch, and it's actually innervated by cranial nerve number 7. So anything attached, not anything, but most of the stuff attached to the hyoid is innervated by that, along with all the facial expression muscles. So those are the tongue muscles. Remember, these are going to help us like push food up towards the hard palate, and then push food, right? Push food up to the hard palate, push it towards the soft palate, so that the soft palate can close off the nasopharynx during swallowing, and food can move into the pharynx and then into the esophagus back behind it.